Welcome to the deep dive. So, if you've been following the education debate for, I don't know, the last couple of decades, the whole narrative has just completely flipped.
Oh, completely.
We went from, this era of really direct exclusion, the blunt message that only some people were college material,
Right.
to an era now of aggressive, almost universal inclusion. Today, it's all about potential, opportunity, transformation.
All these buzzwords.
Exactly. But here's the question we're tackling today, and it's a bit unsettling. Did the actual structure change, or did the system just, get a fresh coat of paint?
And that is the core paradox of the source material we're getting into.
Yeah.
The language that institutions, foundations,
Yeah.
the language they use today is all progressive. It's focused on equity, on access.
It sounds great on paper.
It sounds like it has fundamentally reformed itself.
Yeah.
But the source argues the structural outcome, who gets sorted where, who ends up carrying the risk, that remains stubbornly the same.
And the material calls this the new taxonomy of educational sorting. I find that term new taxonomy is so perfect because it implies this scientific classification system. It's still doing the same job, just with new labels. Yeah. Think about that old message you mentioned. You're not college material. I mean, that was painful, but it was direct.
You knew where you stood.
Yes. Now, the vocabulary is glossy, it's aspirational, it's all unlocking potential, and you deserve transformation. So the big question for you listening is what happens? What's the consequence when you apply this modern feel-good language to the same old unupdated structures of sorting?
And that's really our mission statement for this deep dive, isn't it? We're trying to peel back that mask of equity. The goal is to show the persistent, the unupdated internal logic that's still driving certain students, especially high-promise, low-income students, down very specific paths.
Paths that often come with the just debilitating financial burdens.
For decades. We have to look past the shiny mission statements and really analyze the machinery of who goes where.
Okay, let's do that. Let's look at the machinery. Who is this new taxonomy really targeting now?
The mechanism focuses like a laser on the bright, poor kids.
Okay.
These are your high-achieving, academically gifted students from low-income backgrounds. And they are now explicitly, heavily pushed, almost exclusively toward four-year colleges.
Right.
They're championed with this incredibly powerful language, potential opportunity. In a way, they're the system's proof of concept.
The evidence that it's all fair now.
Exactly, that the system is working for everyone.
But for that to work, for the university path to be seen as the only path to success, you have to do something to the other options, don't you?
They become collateral damage. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
While these bright kids are channeled into universities, technical education gets deliberately sidelined.
So anything from skilled trades to high-level engineering tech?
All of it. The source material is really clear on this. Technical education remains fundamentally stigmatized. It's still seen as the institutional fallback, the place for students who supposedly couldn't handle real academics.
So the perception hasn't budged, even if the jobs and the tech have completely changed.
Not one bit.
And that division, that brings us right back to this idea of the mask of equity. The system can point to all the high-achieving, low-income students it's sending to four-year schools and just declare victory.
Right. They say, look at this diverse class. We did it. We solved access.
But if you're starving and stigmatizing the technical path at the same time, what's a structural outcome that hasn't changed at all?
The structural outcome is that the status hierarchy is perfectly preserved. Before, the sorting was about whether you were smart enough for college.
Okay.
Now, the sorting is about whether you are worthy of the highest prestige. The source suggests this mask of equity just replaces one type of exclusion, being told you can't go, with something more insidious.
Which is?
Debt-laden inclusion. You get to come, but the cost might be financially ruinous. And all the while, you're being steered away from paths that offer real stability with a lot less risk.
That framing it's just so revealing, especially when you look at how they're recruited. The source uses this really specific and, a pretty brutal analogy for it.
Yeah, the author does not mince words here. They describe college recruiters moving through low-income schools like timeshare salespeople.
Wow. A timeshare salesperson. That immediately makes you think high-pressure emotional language and critically not talking about the long-term costs or how to get out.
That's the core of it. They are selling transformation, They're not selling a specific career, not a specific set of skills. They are selling a guaranteed leap up the social ladder.
And that's a powerful pitch.
It taps directly into the deepest hopes of these families: economic mobility, a better life for their kids. It's emotionally potent. And it's really hard to say no to, especially when it's presented as the only way out.
And what makes it such a deceptive sales tactic is what they intentionally leave out.
Exactly, the calculated omission.
So if they're selling the dream, what are they strategically not mentioning in these pitches?
They leave out the hard data. First, they absolutely avoid talking about measurable employment outcomes.
As in, how many graduates from this program actually get a job in their field?
Right. 6 months later, a year later, that data is often just ignored. And second, maybe even more catastrophically for these students, they avoid talking about the debt-to-income ratio.
Okay, let's pause on that. For anyone listening who might not know the term, why is avoiding the debt-to-income ratio, the DTI, so devastating?
It's the metric of financial survival.
Yeah.
It's that simple. DTI is the reality of your likely monthly loan payment versus your likely starting salary.
And when that's upside down?
You have a crisis. When the debt is huge compared to what you can earn, it's a disaster.
Yeah.
If you have a wealthy family as a safety net, a high DTI is an inconvenience. For a student whose family has nothing to fall back on, that mortgage-sized debt becomes an anchor for life.
So they're selling hope based on a prestigious label, and it's completely divorced from the financial reality of paying for it.
Precisely.
And it's that combination, the pressure, the aspirational talk, and the missing information, that leads directly to what the source calls the perfect misalignment.
That misalignment is the tragic systemic outcome. The whole system is basically designed to sort students into the path with the highest prestige, and it doesn't care about student interest or what the job market actually needs.
And we see this play out across two different paths. Let's talk about path one, the one that's being marketed so hard.
Okay, path one, the university path. Promising students enroll. They're often pushed toward degrees in, say, the humanities or social sciences. Degrees that might not line up with what local employers are desperate for.
So they graduate with credentials.
Right, but maybe not the specific technical skills the market is screaming for. The result is they are burdened with what the source calls mortgage-sized debt they'll carry for decades. They got the prestige, but not the income to support it.
And then there's path two, the one that makes economic sense but gets no respect.
Path two, the technical path. These are the programs that could launch strong, stable, high-paying careers. Think high-skill maintenance, engineering technology, advanced manufacturing.
Things we desperately need.
Yes, but they're starved for attention and investment because they're seen as the lesser option. They offer high starting salaries, low or even zero debt, and employers are begging for these graduates. Yet, they are systematically overlooked.
So if you just look at this rationally, from an economic standpoint, the system is encouraging its brightest kids to take on massive financial risk for a path with uncertain employment, while stable, high-skill fields that need workers are deliberately ignored. It's an economically irrational system. It's driven entirely by social judgment.
Precisely. And the source has this one pivotal, almost theatrical anecdote that shows this social judgment, this deep mythology in its purest form. This isn't just a theory. It's like a transcript of the bias in action.
Okay, I think we need to slow down here because this is really the climax of the source material. Can you set the scene for us? Who's in this conversation?
The author of the source is talking to a foundation director. So someone who controls a lot of money aimed at helping these exact same low-income, high-achieving students.
Okay.
And the author suggests a path for one of these students who is really interested in hands-on problem-solving work. The suggestion is simple. Maybe this student would thrive in an engineering technology program at a community college.
And the reaction from the foundation director?
The source says it was a reaction close to horror.
Horror.
Horror, not just disagreement, not confusion, a visceral emotional reaction, as if a sacred rule had just been broken.
Yeah.
The director was genuinely appalled.
And the quote, the director's immediate shocked reaction, it just says everything. She says, but those students are headed for university.
Yes, and the source really underlines the shock, saying the director spoke as if I had suggested we send national merit scholars to truck driving school.
Wow, that comparison just lays the whole bias bare. In her mind, a high-skill technical career is the same status as the lowest-skill labor.
It's like excellence and technical skill are seen as opposites. They can't exist in the same person.
I can just picture the author trying to explain, trying to clarify that, no, these students were actually interested in this. It was a choice based on their passion, a desire for a stable career. Did that context help at all?
Not in the slightest. The director's reply just ignored all of that. The vocational interest, the economic logic, it was just pure bafflement. She replied, "But they're capable of so much more."
Capable of so much more. That phrase it's chilling. It's the Rosetta Stone for this whole new taxonomy, isn't it?
It is.
It's not a critique of the student's ability. It's a critique of the worth of the work itself.
Exactly right. That one phrase contains the entire judgment that governs this sorting. Technical work is, it's fine for the lesser students, the ones who can't handle more the rigor of a university.
But for a student who can handle it,
It's seen as a waste of talent, a failure of ambition. It's an intellectual snobbery that's baked right into the guidance system.
So when we pull this all together, from the timeshare sales pitch to this horrified foundation director, the core problem isn't a lack of money or bad programs. It's all about status.
The structural barrier is a core assumption that technical education isn't just a different path. It's inherently less valuable, less prestigious, less worthy of the good students. The whole sorting machine is driven by this antiquated social hierarchy, not by what the market needs or what makes economic sense, or even what the student actually wants to do.
And that leads to the source's final and really damning conclusion. The internal logic of the system it failed to update. The skills we need in the economy have completely changed. The source says computers might have replaced carburetors.
Right.
But the deep-seated institutional ideas about merit and prestige and what makes a worthy job are completely fossilized.
And that is the essential takeaway for you listening to this. When you hear that language of opportunity, you have to ask yourself, is this real opportunity that leads to stability? Or is this language just masking the old hierarchies, the old value judgments that put academic prestige above everything else?
This has been such a necessary deep dive. We've really uncovered how the system changed its marketing, moving from direct exclusion to this kind of debt-laden inclusion, but without changing the fundamental way it sorts people and judges value. Technical work, no matter how complex or how badly we need it, is still seen as the lesser path in the minds of the people running the show.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to consider, and this comes right from the source. If the system views technical skill as less worthy, even when the market is starving for it, and at the same time it works so hard to protect the university path for these specific students, you have to ask a really profound question.
Is the value they're placing truly on the education itself? Or is the value simply in the prestige of the label? And if it's just the label, is it worth carrying mortgage-sized debt for decades just to say you have it?